Greetings, YouTube. Today I'll be talking about Marvel's Avengers: The Ultimate Character Guide. Though it's a bit of a misnomer because there's actually a revised and updated version of this. So this particular volume isn't what you might call all that ultimate. So what this is a collection of characters from the Marvel Universe that have been members of the Avengers, who are allies of the Avengers, and who are enemies of the Avengers. So Avengers is a really broad category. Each one gets a single page spread, and you get a little main blurb, like major victory, and a little paragraph about him, and then you get a couple of smaller subcategories, like little comments about him, and you get images from the comic. And it's interesting to see because quite a bit of the time you'll have different images from like different artists, so you have to see how the different artists have interpreted the character, and it's kind of cool. Um, Little blurbs in here like a preservative added to his blood helped to keep him alive on his journey. He was an astronaut of some variety. It went very far in a ship. Then you have a little section here under vital stats, the things that like real name, occupation, base, height, weight, all in both in imperial and metric, which is a nice touch. Eyes, a synopsis, a very brief synopsis of the powers. For example, Major Victory has powerful psychokinetic abilities allow him to project mental blasts of psychic energy at enemies. Allies in this case are Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, The Thing, and Firelord. Why not the Fantastic Four? I'm not sure, but it just lists The Thing. And foes, Badoon, Magus, and Korvac, which, after having read this book, those names at least click in my head, though I can't remember much about them. And they also have down here a little bar, and this little bar lists energy protection, strength, durability, fighting skill, intelligence, and speed. And they give you some stats. Now, this is the part of the book that I find one of the stranger things. I'll get you the really strangest thing in a minute. Is that they chose a scale of 1 to 7. And 1 to 7 to me seems like a really weird scale to pick. 1 to 5, okay. 1 to 10, I get it. 1 to 20, those would all make sense. And I think a 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 would have been preferable, though 1 to 10 is probably the simplest. The 1 to 7 is strange. And the reason it's strange is, for example, under strength, they list Spider-Man as a 4. Now, I've been reading Spider-Man for a very long time, all right? Or read. I don't like reading Spider-Man much anymore. And it was always in the comic fan community that Spider-Man's strength metric was often used to compare things to others. And his metric was always 10 tons, that he could lift 10 tons. Okay? So that means that this scale has to be geometric, that a 1 is considered a normal human, a 2 is considered a very athletic human, a 3 is considered maximum human, and then a 4 is considered superhuman. Blood of Heroes and I think Mutants Mastermind 3rd edition does a scale concept where a 6 is absolute peak human. That's you can never get better than a 6, and then anything beyond that is superhuman. And I prefer that, again, the finer scale gives you more ability to tune things in. And the reason I say it needs to be tuned in is because if you list Spider-Man as a 4, okay, that's not a problem. You list them at a 4. But they also have Wolverine listed as a 4. Now, Wolverine is not in the same strength category as Spider-Man. I don't think anyone's going to debate that they are. He's probably in the 1,000-pound range, and yet Spider-Man's in the 10-ton range. Spider-Man's only a smidge weaker, or it's maybe even in the same category as Power Man. I mean, they're both strong, but they're not known for being godlike in strength. And for speed, they have a couple of characters in here who actually move at the speed of light. I think one of them actually turns into light. And that's a 6. So that's the maximum you could have in a relativistic universe. And a 7 is beyond that. Though a bunch of these people in here that have 7s are actually teleporters. So I don't know if you can really consider teleportation faster than the speed of light, because it's just in your one place to another. If you're in a D&D or Pathfinder, if you've got the greater teleportation spell, you could go anywhere in the universe in 6 seconds. I'm not sure if that would view that as faster than the speed of light or just instantaneous transportation, essentially. I'm not sure. But so I find their scale weird. For Galactic, he's got straight 7s, and okay. In fact, speaking of Luke Cage, in here, he was listed as an intelligence of like a 4, which is really supposed to, according to this scale, is pretty much beyond your average human's capacity. And I don't ever remember seeing Luke Cage presented as being super intelligent. A couple of the really bright people in this world are 6s, and that makes sense because they're supposed to be really, really smart, like, Mr. Fantastic and things like that. But there are some things in here that just make no sense to me. And I think they would have been better off using a scale of 10 because, or we could also be looking at different authors were involved in this book, not one person. And in that case, well, you could just throw things out as far as consistency goes, which is very appropriate for a comic book reference book because comic books themselves are wildly inconsistent because different writers do different things with the same character. It's really bothersome to people who want to follow the comics because it's like you have to tune yourself into a particular writer at a particular time in their career, and you may fall in love with the character that they've created, and then someone else gets a hold of it and it's a completely different character. It just looks the same. It's one of the reasons I stopped reading comic books. But I wanted to pick this up because I like these kinds of references. It was $2 at a flea market, and I knew that I could pass it on to someone I know when I was finished with it. But some of these characters are really silly. For example, there's a character in here, this winged person right there, and I happen to actually like the art in that image. I think it might be Byrne, but I'm not positive. I do love John Byrne. And her name is, last name Soar, Soar. Her first name, Dinah. Dinosaur. Seriously. There's a character in here who has superpowers, and they list how, most of the time, they list how a person acquired their superpowers because every comic fan is interested in how did someone get their superpowers. Were they born with them? Mutant spiders, things like that. And he got them because he was outside and it was really windy. Yeah, I'm serious. He acquired his superpowers because it was really windy one day. And to me, that looks like a comic book writer that really wanted to go to lunch, and they're like, yeah, windy, and they left. Because it makes no sense. And reading these back to back to back, it took me a while because I didn't read the whole thing in one sitting, it really did show me the absurdity of comic book characters. Now, I would have preferred something closer to the Mutants and Masterminds DC Universe character guide, which I've got up on my shelf. There's a 2-volume set. Because they actually get into far finer scale. They get into actual game stats and things like that. So I think they should have gamified this a little bit more to make it more descriptive and to make comparisons between characters more sensible. And they should have had an editor that made sure that things were consistent across the board. But then again, maybe they're just like, comic fans, we don't care. They don't care if it's consistent. And from the sales numbers, apparently they don't. So it was a good book as far as a quick reference was concerned. It's not overly large, not overly long. More than 200 heroes and villains, and they don't lie. And even though I think that some of them are only tangentially related to the Avengers, it was still interesting. So if you're an Avengers fan or just a Marvel comic fan, you might want to look into this. Though you might want to see if you can get your hands on the expanded, updated copy as opposed to this one. Though you probably get this one really cheap because it's not expanded and updated. So I'll be passing this on to someone I know at work because I no longer need it. And I think I may actually get into talking about those DC books too because they're quite good. I really did enjoy those. So this has been Avengers Ultimate Character Guide.